to be like perfect opportunity to talk a little bit about FluJay over here, and so all our members know about that. And as part of that, they started this virtual world tour, where Steve is one of the speakers, and we were very lucky to have him here today to talk to us. So some of you are probably having already know Steve because he's been here on JNation in the first edition. He has also participated last year on our virtual one. So we're really happy to have both of you here. So Georgian, without any further delay, please feel free to introduce FluJay.
Sure, thank you so much. So what we are doing, as Roberto mentioned, is a virtual Jug Tour, of which this is actually one stop. So we've spent March going to about 10 different jugs in the same way online. So the Munich jug, the Bonn jug, and some in the US, Denver, St. Louis, and so on, Hyderabad, India. And we've just started the second part. So we're doing this just in March and April this year to introduce FluJay. And what FluJay is the simplest way to explain it for myself is Java.net. So back in the day, I was in Sun Microsystems, and we used to have Java.net, which, as you can see, doesn't exist anymore, which is the kind of the central place anyone doing Java would go to find information about what is new in Java. And there was a blog, and there was an opinion poll, and all kinds of a general place for all different people involved in the Java world to find information. And of course, what's happened since then is a number of things, but one of them is that there are now multiple different OpenJDK distributions, and also that there are multiple different updates to the major releases, so 4 per year. So that's a lot of new information continually coming out, and also a lot of different OpenJDK distributions. And it's really in nobody's interest to have one place where you can see all the different distributions. So, I mean, Red Hat has its site where it talks about its OpenJDK distribution. And Bellsoft has its site where it talks about Liberica. And Azul has its site where it talks about Zulu. So what we really need is what we used to have with Java.net, a place above all these different Java technologies and distributions, and that covers the whole ecosystem, and it is a place where we can all bring our shared knowledge together. So one part of what FluJay is providing that list. Another part is providing information on those updates. So I'm here looking at Java 8, and here are the most recent quarterly updates, and I can see what's been added. So here are all the issues that have been fixed in April 2020 for Java 8. And I can vote on these, and once I've voted on them, then all the most voted items find their way onto the highlights page. And so for each release, for each update, we can see what the community likes most in that update. So those are some of the things that FluJay is focused on. So what does FluJay mean itself? What is FluJay? FluJay, or you can see at the top here, FluJay is a place for friends. So the F from FluJay is for friends. Of the second O is for of. The next one is for open. So FluJay, and then you have the J for Java, and we've added A and Y so that you know how to pronounce it. Otherwise, it would be Fuj. And also, this gives us a bird as a logo. And of course, in the Java world, we know about foo and bar. Those are often placeholders in demo applications. And you should really see FluJay as a placeholder for your input and your participation in the community. So we have this information about the OpenJDKs. We have an opinion poll. We have events calendar, command line arguments, all integrated together into one place. What's really interesting, especially, is when you look at this content, it comes actually from another place called Java Almanac, so by a Java champion, Mark Hoffman. And similarly, when we look at the command line arguments, I mean, does anyone know where to go to find all the Java command line arguments. What's actually new in terms of command line arguments between one release and the next. So here we're looking at Java 11, and you can see what's new in terms of command line arguments, and here's what's been added. And this comes from another place again, so by Chris Newland, a Java champion. He has a site, Chris Who Codes. So he's integrated his content. Mark Hoffman has integrated his content, and this comes from the OpenJDK bug tracker. So this is an integration platform. Plus, you can blog here. So if you have your own blog, you can share your content here as well. So you can republish existing content or have completely new content here. So you're very welcome to join in. There's a Slack channel, of course, where we discuss what should be published, and we discuss the Jug Tour and all these different activities. And so also when you look at these different parts of the blog, which is called Fuji Today, you see that there's an area for release notes, for example. And so in the release notes, so I'm looking through this page, and maybe I'm interested in Payara. So then I read the Payara release notes, which are republished on Fuji. And at the same time, I found out about, hey, Oracle WebLogic also had a release. Well, normally you wouldn't find, you know, the WebLogic information on the Payara site or vice versa. The fact that we have this place where we can gather all this content together enables somebody who just comes to this page to find out about all these related technologies and their release notes. So if you're working for a Java technology company, it would be great if you would republish your release notes here as an example of what we can do on Fuji. So every day we have a new article published on Fuji Today, and then we tweet that. So please follow us on Twitter. So Fuji.io. Just over the last week, we had our 1,000th follower, and Fuji has existed since April last year. So it's almost 1 year. We've existed for almost 1 year. You might ask yourself, okay, who is behind this? We have a board, and Azul is the one that initiated this. So I joined Azul in April last year. I've been at Azul for a year, specifically to lead this project. But on that board are also Datadog. People might know Marcus Hurt from Java Flight Recorder. He's involved. DataStax there, Peter Humphrey, that people might know from Pivotal. Annie Lastic is there. Many people might know Nicholas, forget his surname for the minute, from Hazelcast. And Steve, who's here from JFrog. Payara, Steve Millage is very actively integrated, and people from there, and also Simon Maple from Sneak and Brian Vermeer. So these are all well-known Java community members and well-established Java technology organizations that are together promoting and supporting this effort. So I should just leave it here, because that's all there's really to say. It's the place that you can go to find out all the information you will ever need about Java. And if anything's missing, you go to the Slack channel and you say, hey, why aren't you doing this or that? Or shouldn't we have this on Fuji? And you can really make it the central place. You can see we have different themes as well. It can look pretty cool. Also on mobile. And so the starting point really is to join on Twitter, so Fuji.io. And then every day you will have a new tip or a new insight, because since about 4 or 5 months now, we've been posting a new article every day on Fuji. So there's really a lot of content. So if you have events that you want to share, if you have news you want to share, if you have any ideas, you know, this is the Java community space that we've been missing, and that's now been alive and functioning and with momentum for a year now, and it's pretty good. And I'm really happy to be involved. And the more people that join in, the more successful it will be. That's the story.
All right, cool. That's awesome. And if you haven't checked out or followed Fuji, it's a great community resource. And thanks very much, Fuji, for also sponsoring this user group tour. So,
and actually, before Steve begins, there's a DevOps section that you find here, which is actually run by quite a few people from JFrog. So if there's a particular area that a company is an expert in, they can kind of own that area and kind of run that area. So people involved here are like Baruch and Kat Cosgrove and others who are involved in JFrogs, and Sven Rappert as well. And so if there's any area that you find interesting in the Java community, you can run that part of Fujay. We can delegate it to you. We can outsource it to you, and you can own that and do whatever you want in that particular area. So I'll stop sharing and I'll pass it over to Steve.
Cool. Thanks, Kirchen. Okay, and before I start my presentation, first of all, it's really awesome to see so many familiar faces. I think the Coimbra Jug and the whole community in Portugal for Java is awesome. I really enjoyed coming there for J Nation, being able to be at the conference, and seeing so many other speakers and folks involved in the community there is just amazing. So you built an amazing community, Roberto.
Thanks, man. I mean, it's going to be the same without you. And thank you so much for all the advice that you've given me over the last few years. And also Jurgen, right? Because we've been talking about also all these communities
Thank you.
around. Unfortunately, we cannot get together on conferences to talk anymore. Let's hope that
yeah. So
that
speaking of that, so I noticed my coffee mug here. It's might be a little hard to see because the camera likes to take over the focus.
It's a GeekCon one. I have one.
Yeah. So this is a historic Java mug. This is one of my favorite mugs because it has all the different JVM languages as spaceships on it.
Yeah.
So we still have good memories of all of the conferences and events we've done, and hopefully we'll get back to seeing each other in person again.
Hopefully, yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Java and DevOps today, and the goal here is just to give everyone a high-level overview of some of the things which you should be aware about or you should be looking at when you consider doing Java and DevOps tooling. Hold just a sec. Let me swap displays. Okay, are the slides coming through fine?
Yeah, but they seem to be upscale. Yeah.
Let me try again. Did that work? No.
Still upscale.
I love PowerPoint. Let's try that. Did that work better?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And now it's
Okay,
perfect.
awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about different DevOps tools, but before we get into that, I don't know how you guys felt, but a year ago when all the pandemic started and we had to stop traveling, this is kind of how I pictured things would be. We'd kind of be vigilantes, defending ourselves, going down the road with our faithful companion. Actually, a lot of people have gotten pets this past year. We got a cat, actually, not a dog, but a cat. So I think this has been a great year for pet ownership as well. But I think for most of us, this isn't actually how we looked, and instead this is closer to it. So some sort of overdone home setup now. So this is actually where I'm sitting from a side view. So like 3 monitors and a camera facing down and microphone and a backdrop, a green screen, and everything. So I think this is, and of course if you're working from home, you want to be relaxed, right? No stuffy suits or pants. You just wear a nice bathrobe.
Bathrobe. That's what it is.
Exactly. And even if somebody's wearing a nice shirt or jacket, you never know what's on the bottom half, right? Nobody can see that.
There's a very small difference between this and actually sleeping. All you got to do is tilt your chair back and you're there.
Yeah, so it's a very comfortable chair. I would be lying if I said I haven't fallen asleep. So I think this is actually how things have ended up. But we're very fortunate in the tech industry that we can continue to do the sort of great work we do, and coding and technology and even presentations like this from the comfort of home. So I think we're fortunate, and we should all hopefully be getting back to the new normal soon. And all of the content which I'm covering here is from the book which currently I'm working on, DevOps Tool for Java Developers, which is an O'Reilly title. We're just finishing up the last few chapters now, so it should be published the second half of this year. Also, all the slides are available at the link there, the QR code. So if you use your phone and go there, or go to I think it's show notes, jfrog.com/show notes is where it takes you, and that has the slides for today's presentation. It is a raffle, and whoever wins the raffle, I think we're giving out a few JFrog t-shirts. I can't remember how many, but we'll actually mail you the JFrog t-shirt, and you can give it a try there. Okay, I'm just opening up the chat because I noticed folks. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to spam them in chat as well. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat if you have anything there.
Well, if you don't mind, people can actually talk here. So.
Oh yeah, that's fine too. So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, so if you want to put questions to Steve, just unmute yourself and ask him directly.
Okay, and here are the topics we're going to cover today. So we'll go over the source code repository, continuous integration, package management for binaries, so you can get a full bill of materials and traceability, how to do security scanning of your binaries, and then how to deliver to the edge, so continuous delivery to the edge and beyond. Sorry, my allergies are kicking in. Let me find the mute button. Okay, no sneeze. That was a good one. I think this is the URL for the show notes page, in case you didn't try the QR code. Let me see if that works. Yeah. So the Coimbra Jug meetup is the second one on the list if you go there. Okay, so let's start out with source code repository, and we'll go through a brief history of source code repository, probably dating some of us in the room. But source code has actually evolved a huge amount in terms of its complexity. I remember when I was in university, a lot of people were still using locking version control systems, and concurrent version control systems were just becoming popular. So people started using those instead. Nowadays, we have much more modern distributed version control systems, and we've really evolved back from the primitive days. And what version control systems do is they give you the ability to work in large teams or in groups without worrying about overwriting other people's changes or losing history or having conflicts on the same file. And if you look at the evolution, the first generation was systems like SCCS and RCS. I'm focused mainly on the open source ones here. There's a whole bunch of additional proprietary ones. Could anyone brave enough to admit knowing about or using RCS?
I used one called PVCS. It was also like with locking, not sure. Do you remember that? Do you ever heard about that one?
TVCS.
No,
that...
PVCS.
Oh, PVCS. Yeah. So I'm familiar with PVCS. Yeah, I mean, and there were a bunch of commercial version control systems like Perforce and Microsoft Team something that were also for much longer than the open source version control systems. They stuck with locking version control systems, which was kind of unfortunate. What really transformed how you could do coding was things like CVS and Subversion. So these would now allow multiple people to modify the same file. Basically, you would optimistically make changes to the file. If there's nobody else who changed the file, you could check it back in without any conflicts. If two people change the file, then you do a three-way merge between them. CVS was particularly bad on three-way merges because the base version it chose and the way it did merges would sometimes you'd be like reintegrating the same change over and over and over again. Subversion was a little bit smarter about this and also had better branching, and the server crashes less in general. So for this class of version control system, Subversion was kind of the best. And then what most of us are using today are third generation version control systems. So distributed VCSs like Git, Mercurial, Bazaar, others. And these kind of revolutionize the way people look at version control systems by allowing you to have your own copy of the entire repository. So it's not just that you had to check your local changes into the remote. Now you actually have the full version control history locally. It allows you to do things like offline development, where you can actually check in without being connected to the internet. Peer-to-peer version control, where you can share changes directly with other people without going through the central server. And of course, you can also use it in the same sort of central model. And if you look at how things have evolved, really the only version control system people are using today is Git. So if you're not using Git, probably you're on the wrong version control system at this point. Subversion's pretty much died off in terms of usage and attention. There's still some companies which use it, and it is reliable. It's just not the most modern system. Mercurial was another competing version control system as well. And of course, CVS and all of the legacy ones have mostly died off. Okay, and somebody's mentioning that folks are using Garrett. Garrett's mostly a code review tool, right? Is it also a VCS? Okay, well, James will tell us. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how Mercurial works from a high level, because I think most folks are familiar with this, but it's good to know the conceptual model. So the most common setup for Mercurial is you have a central remote repository. Often it's a system like GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab or one of the other source control systems, which provides a web user interface, but you can just run a basic Git server as well. People will fetch and pull from the central remote repository to a local remote repository. So even though you can theoretically push between different peers directly, often you just kind of establish that you're all syncing to a single remote repository. And then from your local repository, you pull a working copy. And when you're checking in changes, you're checking into the local repository. When you're pushing changes, you're pushing to the remote repository. You can fetch the local repository, merge changes in, and a pull will essentially fetch merge. So it gets you all the changes directly to your working copy. And you can see from the usage of different developer tools, these are kind of common tools which folks are using according to the Stack Overflow survey, and GitHub ranks really high on the list. Of course, things like Slack are becoming increasingly popular because of telework, as well as Zoom. Jira is kind of one of the most common bug control systems, and other systems like GitLab, Microsoft Teams, and other version control systems which are Git-based also show up quite high on the list here. So this just shows you the popularity of Git and Git systems in general. There's a few different branch strategies which you might want to look at, and I go into a lot more detail on this in the book in terms of branch strategies, but most of them are based on Git flow, which was one of the first branching strategies, which was formalized for using Git. It's also the most complex branching strategy. It has you using at least 5 or 6 branches. So you have one for developing. You have one feature branch for each of the features you're developing. You push your changes to a release branch. And then you also have kind of a master production branch where you tag things and then push them back out. So I think this is the most complicated, and it's most suitable for projects where if you have multiple versions you have to develop simultaneously. A strategy like Git flow with all these branches lets you do that. You can maintain version 1 and version 2 in parallel because you have different release branches for each of the releases you're releasing. It can be overkill for anything which is web or SaaS based, because often in those cases what you care the most about is the latest release. You're not trying to maintain old versions and keep them updated in parallel. And some general features of Git flow are the merge strategy, which they don't recommend using fast forward merges. Fast forward merges modify your history. So this is safer, but it makes the history a little bit more cluttered because you see a lot of integrations going on. They also don't recommend rebasing, and the release strategy is each release goes to a separate branch. I think more common workflows, especially for SaaS projects, as I mentioned, would be either GitHub flow or GitLab flow, and there's a whole bunch of other branching strategies as well. But in these cases, you have again a branch per feature, but you just consider your main branch to be what you're releasing off of, so you don't have separate release branches. In the case of GitHub Flow, they don't specifically recommend fast forward or rebasing. GitLab is more open-ended on this, and you can use it if you find it helpful to keep the version control history more linear and less integrations between different branches. Okay, now the second topic I'm going to cover is a little bit about continuous integration. This is important, especially since you want to be releasing often and you want to have a strategy where you're continually pushing changes, testing changes, and making sure that you're getting features out quickly to production. Typically, the way you do this is you'd have some sort of continuous integration server. Could be Jenkins or Circle CI, or we have one in JFrog called JFrog Pipelines. Your CI server would do all of your code builds and would push through various different stages as the build gets promoted, and you'd have specific quality requirements for each of the different phases as you promote to different stages. So they could be unit tests, acceptance tests, integration tests. As you go through these stages, you get an increasing level of quality until you hit production. And hopefully by that time, you have a release which isn't going to produce any bugs or regressions or defects for your customers. And if you have this streamlined and it's all operating quickly, it lets you push out changes more quickly and react to customers' requirements and get features and also bug fixes and security fixes out more quickly. Now the question is, what if you don't have good automation to production? What sort of things can happen? And so one example of this is Night Capital. This is kind of a classic historic fail in build automation and DevOps processes, where they were integrating a new trading system. They pushed it live the morning when it was supposed to start trading, and the system was executing erroneous trades and cost them about 10 million per minute of system failure. Now, what they'd done is they'd pushed an update to their system, and it was a manual update, and they'd updated the servers with a new version of the software. They the first thing they tried to do was roll back this change, and unfortunately, rolling back the change made the problem worse, and they had to go back and try to troubleshoot a second time. The root cause of this turned out to be they reused an existing API. They manually pushed the changes to their server farm, which had 8 servers, and they pushed it to 7 of the 8 servers. The 8th server had the same API call, but it was hooked up to old functionality. And so the clients which were updated and were calling the old functionality, they were executing the erroneous trades. And when they rolled back, now rather than one server executing erroneous trades, all 8 servers were executing erroneous trades, which exacerbated the problem. They finally figured out the root cause, solved the problem, and it took them about 45 minutes from start to finish on fixing this. Cost them $440 million. And this was across 154 different stocks, which they couldn't refund. Ultimately, Night Capital doesn't exist anymore. They were merged with another company to become financially stable. So you can have huge business consequences if you don't have the right level of automation in your processes. Okay, the next topic we're going to talk about, we'll get back to package management, is a little bit about security scanning. Again, security scanning is an area which, if you don't have the right technologies, if you don't have the right approach, it can be catastrophic. And I think it's best equated to what we all saw in the past 20 or 30 years with oil spills and the amount of liability that these can cause. One example of an oil spill which was only recently resolved was Taylor Energy. So if you look at this, this was in the Gulf of Mexico. They had an oil platform, and Hurricane Ivan back in 2004 knocked over the platform. It caused a massive leak, which now is known to be about 300 to 700 barrels per day. And the cleanup of this cost the company, which Taylor Energy, which built this platform, $435 million in cleanup. And if you look at this from an open source standpoint, from a data security standpoint, we have the same sort of exposure and risk if you look at our usage of open source projects which have security vulnerabilities, which are constantly being updated and addressed. About 99% of open source projects enterprise projects use open source. 75% of those projects contain at least one vulnerability, and there are about 82 vulnerabilities per average in a code base. And the consequences of not fixing a code error can be just as catastrophic as a oil spill like this. For example, if you look at what happened to Equifax, this was also a catastrophic disaster for them. Even more painful in an oil spill, they were estimated to have spent about $1.4 billion in cleanup costs and $1.38 billion in consumer claims. And of course, this affected 143 million customers worldwide. And the cause of it was the Apache Struts vulnerability. So CV 2017-5638. So, as a Java developer, this is something which could easily have affected you. Surprisingly, years later, after the security vulnerability was already patched and fixed, there's still cases of the Struts vulnerability and other related vulnerabilities seen in the wild. And this is as simple as staying up to date on 0 days and security vulnerabilities, patching them quickly. In this case, Equifax missed a patch on some side servers, not their main servers, but some other servers used for different purposes. Hackers got into those servers, and then they did internal hacks against other servers once they got on the VPN within Equifax. And they were in the system for a few months before they started pulling data. And they finally got caught by the amount of data which they were extracting from the system on consumer records, which triggered some other security firewalls. Now we know that this was likely caused by some Chinese government hackers. So the US officially indicted a Chinese hacking group for this. And there were never actually any instances of consumers being defrauded or the actual lists showing up from Equifax on the internet, which again makes it more likely that it was a government-sponsored hacking operation to get information they could use for different kind of government war purposes, rather than actually an attack against consumers or something which was designed to defraud folks. So getting back to the Taylor oil spill example, in 2017, so almost 15 years after the initial oil spill started, they figured out that the flow rate was 1,000 gallons per day, not the 3 to 5 gallons they initially estimated. The Covalon group came up with a solution for this, where they create an oil containment solution that's hooked up to boats, which now harvest the oil from the oil containment system. They drop down on top of some of the spouts which were leaking the oil slick, and it's thought to be mostly contained at this point, although it's a continual operation to pick up the leaking oil from the oil spill. So the cost of not having good security in your environments is extremely high. Now let's go to the fourth topic, which is continuous delivery. This is all about how you deliver software faster, how you can get it to end users quicker, and how you can push it to the edge. And if you think about it, we're all using devices today, like your phone or your TV or your car, or even your fridge, where you just expect to have availability of updates, of applications with functionality, and for it to be easy and safe to continuously get new features and functionality. So there's kind of a precedence in the industry now that folks expect features and updates, and they expect them now, and they expect them to always be updated. And I think if you think about the flow diagram for how people think about updates and whether they want to take it, the first question you ask yourself is, do you want the update? And if you don't want the update of the new functionality, and if it's optional, now sometimes for mobile devices it's not even optional anymore, but if it's optional, you might choose not to update or to skip or defer the update. If you want it, the next question is it risky? So is the update that we're going to be taking something which might cause downtime or might cause your device to break or something like that? If it's not risky, you'll probably update it. If it's risky, then the question is, do you trust them? Of course, if you trust the vendor, you'll update it. If you don't, can you verify it? Verification, especially for software dependencies, is a very costly and laborious process where you might be running either automated or manual tests to re-verify functionality. And obviously, if you pass the verification, you'll update, but then failing verification or not trusting or any of these other conditions can easily lead to skipping or deferring an update. And this is one of the challenges we have in the Java community, because now we have 6-month release cycles. So back in 2017, Mark Reinhold announced the new 6-month release cadence we have for OpenJDK, which is great and improves the cadence of new releases. It gets new functionality quicker, but it also increases the burden of teams and Java developers to update more frequently. And realistically, it's a hard thing to do. Now, before I show the next slide, just in chat, if you wouldn't mind, let us know what version of Java are you using in production, and let's see how many folks are on different JDK versions. And I'll give folks just a sec to respond.
8 and 11. Interesting. 16 in production.
Okay, so we have a pretty advanced crew here, because I saw a lot of Java 11s. Somebody who actually was on Java 16, which is the very latest version. So yeah, Rebello, congratulations. You are living the dream and being on the bleeding edge of OpenJDK updates.
You are the winner.
And I think we're all greatly looking forward to Java 17, which will be the next long-term release for Java. So I think if you're on Java 11, when Java 17 comes out, that's going to be the release which you really want to be on going forward. Now, in the industry, we haven't kept up quite as well. This is the data from last year on how many folks were on different Java versions, and a lot of folks still on JDK 8. The adoption of JDK 11 at that time was about 25%. Hopefully, it's a little bit higher now. And very few folks who are on the intermediate versions, right? I mean, it's hard to update every 6 months. And if you're on the intermediate versions, and if you're on specifically the official OpenJDK releases, they also don't support the non-LTS releases once the new one comes out. So you have to update pretty quickly. Although, speaking of Java versions, Fujay, which Kirchen did a great intro presentation on, is the best place to find out about different Java distributions and to help you pick the best Java distribution for the work you're doing. Again, if folks wouldn't mind, let us know which Java distribution you're using in the chat. I think especially Geerchin would be interested just to kind of get an informal poll of audiences. So are you using Adopt or Corretto or Alibaba's release, Dragonwell, Liberica, OpenJDK from Oracle, Oracle JDK, Red Hat, build of OpenJDK, Zing, Zulu, or perhaps there are some folks who are on the newly announced Microsoft OpenJDK release as well. Is that actually out yet, Geerchin, or is it just they announced that they're going to do it?
I don't think it's out yet, but they've just announced it. Yeah.
Got it.
I would be surprised if you could already get it.
Okay, so Mario is a happy Zulu user, so that's a great JDK to use and very well supported and great, especially if you're going to be using it for production. A bunch of folks just using core OpenJDK, some folks on IBM. And I think like one of the strong drivers for folks adopting different JDK releases is about long-term the support and patches and maintaining the highest level of security for the release which you're on. So thanks everyone for responding and let us know what you're using. So again, getting back to the chart here. So do you want it? Maybe. Is it risky? Well, yes, of course, JDK updates are risky, as we know, because they can deprecate APIs. Do you trust it? Probably not, because you have to verify it. You know you have to verify it, or you can infect your customers. And I think a lot of this comes down to how costly it is for you to automate the verification and do the update safely. So I think this is, again, kind of a process that hopefully we're all going to get better at, and then we'll be upgrading to more modern JDK releases on a more frequent basis. Okay, so getting a little bit back into deployment, another example of not having good testing and deployment processes is Cloudflare, which a lot of us use as a CDN or a way of insulating our traffic or preventing a lot of bad traffic coming into our networks. And on their huge content delivery network, they pushed out a patch, a seemingly innocuous patch for a regular expression, which caused a global outage for the entire Cloudflare network and took down a whole bunch of public services for the span of about 30 minutes. And it was caused by this particular regular expression. So can anyone a regular expression guru, can you immediately identify what part of this regular expression might have caused servers to run out of processing time and memory? Okay, so let me give you a hint. It's actually this ending part of the regular expression, and if you look at it, it has well two dot stars and equals and another dot stars. You can essentially ignore the capture group, the question colon the open paren question mark colon, and if you take away the capture group, you can see that this breaks down to just a wildcard equals wildcard. Now wildcard in some versions of regular expression libraries, this becomes a to solve this regular expression, it's based on the size of the input you're trying to parse. This becomes an exponentially difficult problem for it to solve, to try all the different combinations. So on small data sets, like if you were passing small documents through the network, this would be fine. When you start getting much larger documents, which they didn't test with, then this would essentially exhaust all the resources on individual nodes of their content delivery network. So if anyone managed to figure out that this was the part of the regular expression which took down the network, then congratulations, you are a Regex genius. For the rest of us who look at a regular expression and just don't understand the gobbledygook unless we spend a half an hour deciphering it, You're probably not going to catch issues like this by code reviews. You're not going to catch it just by looking at the code, or if you make small changes to the code, you wouldn't notice an error. And this is why you need strong testing throughout your entire continuous delivery pipeline to catch changes like this. And a good fix for this one in particular is a lot of more modern regular expression libraries actually check for this case, and they more efficiently handle this, so you don't end up with an exponentially computationally intensive problem. Okay, and the last category, which we skipped over, which I promised we'd get back to, is package management. So package management is not any less important than the other topics, because when you want to try to figure out where a production issue is, this helps you trace back the dependencies. When you have a security issue, this also helps you figure out what upstream packages you depend upon. And having a good binary package management strategy, this gives you better traceability, the ability to see what dependencies you have in your environment, and the ability to make sure that you are tracking all of your releases, and you know exactly what releases are in production and what's included in them. So at JFrog, we have a package management facility, JFrog Artifactory, and we try to be the Switzerland of DevOps in a way. So our package management and binary management works with just about every technology that you can imagine. And if you're using any sort of CI/CD tool, any version control, any tool to push to production, if you're using cloud native like Kubernetes, if you're just pushing to VMs, these are all things which our platform supports, and we provide the best binary management. Also security scanning with X-Ray. JFrog Pipelines gives you CI/CD, and then distribution, which allows you to push to edge devices and have more continuous releases. So hopefully you learned a lot about DevOps. As I mentioned before, the book which is coming out, DevOps Tools for Java Developers, goes into all these topics in a lot more detail and more. We cover microservice architectures. We cover different deployment strategies. I'm writing the chapter right now on mobile devices and mobile testing. So that'll be coming out later this year. Enter the raffle to win a JFrog t-shirt. So just go to the show notes page, which I posted earlier. And we also have a free version of our products if you want to try it, the JFrog platform. So if you go to jfrog.co/Coimbra-Jug, that will get you to the sign up page for the free version of our product. And it's free for use. It comes with a quota, which is enough for single developers. And it gets you started doing binary management and all the other technologies which we talked about. Okay, so or actually that's the link to the show notes page. Okay, I'm confused about the own links, the links which I'm posting myself. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in chat or just unmute yourself and we can chat about stuff. And thank you very much for having me at the Coimbra Jug virtually, and I'm hoping to be back in person, hopefully via motorcycle next time. That's my goal. If you remember, the first time I was out there, I actually swung by on motorcycle, and I was there just for the user group talk, and had to make it back to Madrid for the night. So that was crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember that one. That was crazy. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I'm actually going to have to drop, but Daniel's going to take over the host. And if anyone wants to post any questions to Steve, please feel free to unmute yourselves and go ahead.
Yeah, so it's great to see all the different JDK versions too. I was too busy talking, so I couldn't look at it. But OpenJDK, IBM, Oracle, Adopt, and Corretto. So I think that's a pretty good distribution of folks using different technologies.
So if does anyone have any question? Anyone wants to clear any doubts? Or is everyone too shy today?
Yeah, you know, it's difficult on Zoom calls sometimes to because it's like single threaded, only one person can speak at a time, so you feel like you shouldn't unmute yourself and just interrupt. I think that's actually one of the disadvantages of the amount we do on Zoom, because it makes it harder, especially for shy people, to engage, right? It's easy for one person or like a small set of people to dominate the conversation.
Yeah, I guess. But anyways, Roberto already thanked you, but I'd like to thank you and leave you an invitation for Genation as well. Again, you're always welcome. You both are.
Thank you.
So we expect to see you soon.
Yes.
And thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. I don't want to close the meeting before handing out a Jug goodie. So we have an IntelliJ license to sort around. I'm going to try and do it as we usually do, which is take the participant list and put it on random and go through it until a name pops up that is on the meeting. So let me just share my screen here for a second. Where is it? So let me know if you can see the random.org.
Yes.
So basically, this is the extracted list from the participants. I'm gonna just randomize it, and the first one to show up on the list that is on the meeting gets the license. So here we go. And Diogo Gomes, is he here? Let me see. I don't think so. Okay. So shout out if you hear your name, or if you see your name anyways. Humberto Ferreira, is he here? Joel Dmach, I saw Joel.
I'm here.
There
I'm
you go,
here.
Joel. Do you need the
Congratulations,
license?
Joel.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I can. I'll give you the code straight away on the Zoom chat, so you can.
Thank you very much.
No worries, man. Glad to have you here. And if no one has any other questions, if no one has any doubts, that's the wrap up of it. Thank you once again. Gretchen, it's Gretchen, right? How do you pronounce that?
It's Geert-Jan.
Geert-Jan, okay.
Geert-Jan,
Sorry.
It's not so hard. It's not so hard.
And Steve, really hope to see you guys soon on Genation. We'll probably talk before then. And to everyone that joined us, thank you for being with us today. We'll try and set a new Jug, either Coimbra or Lisbon Jug soon enough. So be on the lookout, guys. And thanks once again, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.